I think where we've gotten to, where we're at today, is kind of messed up. We're at a point where we we disagree, and it's not okay. That's just where we've gotten to. And like somebody's so willing to fry you for having the slightest disagreement. Yeah, I think that's where we're at as a society. And for me, I think great communication is disagreement, is stating how you feel and what you want, and having a respect for somebody else's disagreement and accepting, or not accepting, but really listening to their disagreement, not just trying to serve your own, but really trying to hear them out, where they're coming from, what they want out of it. And when we do that, we get such a higher level of understanding from another human being. But as soon as somebody disagrees these days, how it feels is like we're ready to put up the wall. Like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to hear what you have to say. You're totally different than me. And we just shut people out. And then the conversation's done. And then we slowly try to build this wall up against anybody with disagreement. And we slowly close ourselves off to being just this lonely little individual who does not want to let the rest of the world in. That's a lonely place to be. And so I think, call it a myth or a major point about communication that we've gotten wrong. Disagreement is okay. It's as prevalent as oxygen, and we need to be way more accepting of it.
Yeah, can you dive a little bit more into that? Like, why is disagreement? Why is that? I'm going to call it friction. Why is the creation of friction, maybe amongst the opinions, thoughts? Why is that such a great genesis?
Yeah, maybe the myth is that it is friction. I don't think disagreement has to be friction. I'm looking at it that way.
Okay.
Meaning, if you can picture yin and yang, like they can work together. We don't have to collide disagreements, but how can it sail through? And then the next opinion sail back and through and back. And I think if you could reframe your question a little bit, help me out.
I guess my question is, how do people take that disagreement and turn that into a superpower?
Yeah. All right. I got it. So I'm just thinking about your audience, and I'm thinking about the entrepreneurs that might be listening, or somebody who's a team member to somebody else. If we want to function really well in a society or a world designed for 8 billion people, we have to allow 8 billion people to exist. But instead, what we tend to do is try to design a world for ourselves. We're like, okay, I have these preferences, I have these beliefs, here's who I am. We're so ready to just design a world for one that it makes it a really lonely place when we do that. We're constantly we're turning into, Ben, a me, myself, and I society, right? There's no teammanship. There's no collaboration. There's just like, this is my point, and you should see it my way. I don't want to hear your stuff. If 8 billion people do that, all you have is serious unhealthy conflict left and right. But we got 8 billion people vying for what they want, trying to live the lives that we want. And instead of trying to work with that, we're putting walls between ourselves, and we're not communicating well. We're not really hearing each other out. And so that's kind of the problem. If you just think in the last 15 years, here's what's been thrusted upon us all. Be your authentic self. The Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown. What's another one? Identity. So all 3 of those things, right? These are heavy trends in the last 15 years or so. Authenticity, power of vulnerability, and identity. And if that's all we're being taught, or that's what's being pushed and amplified by social media, look at the major problem we have. Where is the we collectively? How do we hear one another? How do we give people the space to be who they truly and freely are? These are the kind of conversations that are not happening. My book, the title is No Honesty, K-N-O-W, No Honesty. So that's a 4th category being added to that. The side that I mention in the book that is probably the most important thing. And really, if your listeners were to take away one thing today, one thing, it's to be open. You'll totally change your life. You'll increase your happiness. I mean, it's a better world if we can start pushing upon everyone this idea of openness. And here's what I mean by that. That's listening without reservation. It's putting your needs and wants on pause for somebody else. So now when entrepreneurs work together and team members work together, instead of just vying for and pushing me, myself, and I, they're actually taking the time to listen without reservation, to really hear what their team members have to say. Now, that does not mean they have to agree. They're just really listening to what that other person has to say. And when you shut off your mind, you shut off your preferences, and you're totally present to that human being, you get them so much more. Your ability to connect goes through the roof. And so what we're trying to push for is these two sides of communication. If all my leadership team members that I work with can be 100% honest and 100% open in their communication, my gosh, we're unstoppable. That's what we're going for. And that's what's not being delivered in these session rooms and when we work together.
What are the headwinds to leaders, teammates? I'm going to even bring this into like social media spaces, friends, family, marriages. What is the headwind? What is keeping that at bay? I mean, you think of it like in terms of like you have salt water and you have fresh water, right? And it's like we're in this brackish water when we talk about openness and honesty. What are the headwinds that keep people from wanting to engage that?
I really think the biggest word I can come up with is just lazy. It's just laziness. You know, to really develop, like, Ben, I'm looking at you, right? We're eyeball to eyeball on this podcast. And I'm thinking, to make a real connection with you, like, I got to have the stamina, the energy, the willpower, the want, the desire to connect to another human being. You have to want that. But here are the options we have in life. We can choose not to connect. You know, the easier path is, not pour into Ben. Not be well rested and have enough energy to talk through some things that are pretty serious. To go on social media, quickly blast an opinion out there, but not have the energy or the stamina to stay in the conversation and work through whatever conflict there is. It's just so easy to go do that. And then turn off your social media so you don't have to deal with it. So you can go fry somebody however you want to and then back off it. It's so easy for if my wife and I are having a problem at home to be like, you know what, I don't want to talk about it. And I go upstairs and I just get on my phone and I engage with anything other than probably the most important thing in my life. And so it's just distraction and disconnectedness is so easy and we choose it always. And that's why it's really hard. You're watching these books like Jonathan Haidt's book, if you've heard of it, Anxious Generation. Oh my gosh, is that some of the most brilliant work done in the last decade in terms of what is going on with us? And it came out right at the time that my book was launching. And I'm like, this stuff is so good. This is the kind of stuff our world needs. Now, you can embrace laziness. You can have the ease, but along with that, you will have loneliness, depression, anxiety. I mean, we are designed to be social creatures, but we're also in many ways gravitating towards the low-hanging fruit and the ease of disconnectedness.
Yeah. Where do you think the tipping point was where we became lonely? I mean, I just context to that, Ken, is in preparation for today, I knew that we're going to talk probably about some communication, which in my opinion is the umami that happens, right? It's the difference between great outcomes, lazy outcomes, bad outcomes, sort of unknown outcomes. It is amongst everything that we do. And it's often verbal, nonverbal. I mean, there's communication that happens just at a cellular like microbiome that like surrounds us, right? And if you want to talk about energy field, like communication is nonstop happening. But then I've thought about it verbally. If you go back to reading some of like Shakespeare language, it's beautiful, and it is just, it's flowing. There's like it's a craft. There's artistry amongst how to like say something super simple, to literally to like my daughter's generation, which is filled with. I mean, I have to have like a decoder ring to understand what like these four-letter things like LMK, and I mean, I can't even remember all of these things, where we've kind of dumbed it down into four-word or four-letter phrases. And where do you think the tipping point was when you look back historically, where maybe the beginning of this slide into the either the anxious generation or the not open, not honest uh, society began?
Yeah, I mean, we've always struggled with it. I mean, I assume insecurities existed from the beginning of our time. And so I think there are 1,000 different reasons one would not be honest and one would not be open. And we just don't have the time to collect all those. But a great talking point nonetheless. But the tipping point for me, or at least where it's accelerated and it's gotten out of control, really is in the beginning of 2012, when social media became this platform, and you can tag the cell phone along in there too. So if you think about where we've gone with electronic devices and where we've gone with social media. So we went from communicating face to face, Ben, you and I, to a room, to communicating to a screen like we are now, to cell phone taking over our life, where it's in our pockets and it's in our hand. And I'm losing eye contact with people in my life, to it's on people's wrists now to communicate. It's getting slowly closer into our bodies. There's only a matter of time before contraptions are in our body to communicate. And I think that, it's just kind of a crazy thought, but I think the cell phone, I don't know what year that came out. That's not the 2012 point. But when the cell phone came out, I think it did a lot of good in terms of now you can connect with anybody at nearly any time. What did we lose? We lost a little bit of eye contact, maybe a little bit less of a reason to be in the room with one another. Then you put in 2012, and then you add a social aspect to it. Facebook, what else was out there that was hot at the time? MySpace, yeah. Bring that back though. It had some more fun to it. But the but then our way to fulfill our social cups was this inauthentic approach to communication. And then it's not going anywhere. But now how many platforms have this where you can connect to masses, but you're not necessarily deep diving. You're not engaging in rich, meaningful conversations. I mean, you're at the shallow level of communication, dive in, dive out. And so the richness of relationships are going to the wayside. And so I think, it starts with the cell phone. It's enhanced through social media. And here we are today, not reversing much of that at all. Tickets are down for going to the theater. Attendance for church is down overall. Us congregating as a community. I mean, look at it. I mean, it's sad. Less in office stuff. Let's work from home, be on computers all day. And so we have to do something to reverse this. And I do believe the pendulum will swing. So I'm not trying to give you a doomsday type scenario here. I'm just saying it's way over here, and people are experiencing anxiousness, anxiety, loneliness at some of the highest levels we've ever seen. And it'll come back because people won't want to tolerate that. I just don't know how. And I hope that our small work can help accelerate that.
Ken, do you think there's a correlation between people having either the laziness or the lack of desire or the inability to have open and honest conversations, where it feels like a flywheel, whether we agree or disagree, because they're unwilling to actually first have those conversations with themselves?
I mean, I agree with that. Like, play a scenario out, and let's pick it apart a little bit.
I think at the core and root of everything is that people want to be seen, heard, and understood. And when they are seen, heard, and understood, they feel loved. And so often we are externally looking for that, whether it's a like, right, impressions, right, how many views that maybe someone had as a validation, um, and it sort of goes like, oh, I belong. I think that we inherently want, like you talked about, we want to belong to a community. Um, but so often I feel like, especially as I've gotten older, I look less and less for those impressions, likes, external validation. Be- and I think part of it is the more willingness, or maybe you want to call it more maturity, wisdom, to have it more internal conversation. And I think it's the realization that for me, that as I'm coaching entrepreneurs, especially, is that the perfect version of you already exists. It's just waiting to be excavated. And I've always had a leadership philosophy: don't ask someone to do something that you haven't asked to do of yourself first. And so what I notice is when I see or sense or feel insecurity, or the lack of confidence to go do something, it's because they are unwilling, or maybe don't have the tools, frameworks, structures, or the emotional fortitude to have that internal conversation with themselves first. Being like, would they like themselves? Like if they were like to internally like review themselves, go, like that, man, I would want to dive into that. I'd want to like know more about that. I would like that to yourself, that you are a compelling offer.
Yeah. That internal conversation's an important one. Wherever you go with when you design your own life and it's authentic and it's comfortable, it also has to be accepted, heard, and respected by everybody else. That's the problem, is that we are not taking the time to be like, you know what, Ben's a freak and I love him. Where's that? Like I was talking the other day with somebody, and this is going to sound like kind of a bold claim, but I told this guy on the phone, he was struggling with a leadership team member, and he's like, I don't think it's going to work out. I it's just really hard. I think we're really going through some things, and I'm not sure it's going to work out for the company. And I told him, I know you, and I love you. I just think you're a great leader, great entrepreneur. And the challenge is, I too love people. I love them like crazy. I think I could love a terrorist. I do. I think I could really love them. Doesn't mean I like them, but I do think I could love them. And I'm like, but some people would not be a fit for your organization. And some people are destroying your organization. And so don't let that love get in the way of destroying the design of you. And sometimes that happens. And in large part, I think the reason there's so much destruction of teams is because we're really not open to the freaks that are around the table. Because we're really not willing to listen to all the individuals and the personalities in the room. We're so busy serving ego and self that we're so self-absorbed that everything else is wrong. And man, is that screwing us up? Talk about disconnectedness. We're embracing that at high levels. That's got to change. That is a giant uphill battle that I'm ready to take on, is to just help people hear somebody out, try to understand where they're coming from. Nobody was possibly raised exactly like you. They've experienced pains and pleasures totally different than you in life. You've not come anywhere close to walking in their shoes. You cannot possibly understand. So where maybe in the past I used to fry or want to fry somebody for being on the opposite end of the political spectrum, or just go ahead and pick a side right now, Israel or Palestine or Ukraine or Russia. And you know where we go right to? Let me choose a side and let me fire a gun across the way. And that is the wrong approach. And so just nobody's willing to hear each other. They're just totally fighting for their own needs. And that is self-destruction. And so I think a lot of times we spend time like looking internally, which is great. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying we need to spend more time loving, being open, listening to people without reservation, letting a population of 7.999 billion other people in the world in, as opposed to, just serving self. The root, it's going longer now, but this point is such a crucial one. The root is we are not educating the importance of honesty and openness. So when I do talks, Ben, I'll have people, I'll say, hey, so just picture a room of 100 people. And I'll ask a question. I'm like, how many of you were raised by your parents, were taught the importance of honesty and the importance of being open to one another, listening without reservation, putting your needs and wants on pause? Probably 5 hands go up. And then they say, how many of you in grade school, I don't know, grade school, how many of you were taught the importance of honesty and openness? Probably 3 to 5 hands go up. I'm like, okay. Maybe a little bit more depending on the group. And then I'll say, how about in high school? Next to no hands. I don't think I can't remember a talk I've given where 1 hand went up for high school. That it's not taught to be honest, right? I think they just want to shut up teenagers and be like, I don't want to hear you. Just get through this class and do your homework, right? And so we're not taught honesty there. We're not taught openness there. Well, how about in college? If you had the opportunity or the privilege to go to college, were you taught there? Some hands go up, right? Had a philosophical class that taught me about the importance of being open, or a communication class that maybe goes here. But then again, there's only probably 5 to 10 hands that go up. How about at your first job you ever had? Were you taught the value of honesty and openness in the workplace? No hands. Second job, third, fourth, fifth, you get the point. This is not taught. What is taught? Like, we learn everything from social media. We learn that value of a human being is, I don't know, sex sells, or I have to do something crazy to be liked, which doesn't make you liked. And sometimes it makes you a moron. And that's terrible. And so, like, look at the scripts being written here. Social media is teaching us how to engage. Our education system is not teaching us the value of communicating effectively one human being to another. That is a massive, massive problem.
Yeah, it is a massive problem. I mean, it is kind of crazy when you think about, as children, going back to, like, I'm thinking my daughter's, my second oldest is 4, and I mean, she has no problems being open. She has no problems being honest. and you have to be really cognizant of things you say, because I mean, she'll, if you like, you pass gas, like, she'll let everyone know that, and it is interesting that as we go along our education journey, it's about conformity. And conformity, I think, is the opposite of open and honest. To sort of shut up, fit in, and I think that is, I mean, that's something that even I experience. I, like, as you're talking about this education system, I mean, that is totally the truth. And I mean, it truly probably wasn't until I'm going to say, like, my early 30s where I truly started a journey of being more open and honest. And what's crazy about it is that the more open and honest I became and have become, it's not that I offend people. It's not that I have immense amounts of disagreements, but I bring clarity. And it's in that clarity is the ability to articulate not only what I want, but for me to be able to receive what other people are wanting and have alignment of those so that I can win. Right? Because typically when other people are winning, what is it? Is it Zig Ziglar? When you help enough other people get what they want, you will get what you want. I mean, that's kind of what I'm gathering from you in this open and honesty in these structures. I don't know. How's that hit you, Ken?
Yeah, I like what you're saying. That has a way of happening. The more you're helping other people and to help yourself. But I think what you're helping there is this social aspect in your life when you help people. I mean, it is social. You don't help people by being not social. Suppose you could give anonymously, and that's a way of helping people without being social. But like if you were to help my business or I were to help yours, I mean, it is a sense of engagement and enrichment in our lives to have these relationships where we're walking hand in hand, trying to accomplish a goal together. And, to me, that is the makings of a better life. I love what you said. This is why Kelly Knight was so right about you, you know. But conformity is the opposite of open and honest. I think there is so much truth in there that, I really want to explore that. You ever watch reality TV? You don't have to admit, any of the crazy shows. Okay.
No, I will freely admit on podcasts, Landia, is that I was addicted to Real World and Road Rules, like growing up through like high school into like college. Oh man.
Yes. And what else is there now? Big Brother, The Bachelor, there is real love going on, by the way. So I do believe real love's happening. That's not all acting. Survivor's another one. Anyways, I am hooked to those, but I think because I do love the human form in life as real as it can be, not so much acting as much. But I think when people think of the characters you love on those shows, if you can just go back and you can probably think of a few of them. They're not the conformists, right?
Mm-mm.
They're not the ones that blend into the wall. They're the ones that were freely themselves. They were just completely comfortable being themselves. And I think we attach to somebody who is naturally themselves because that feels more human. Like when I watch an entrepreneur screw up, I'm like, I understand you. Yes, we could probably be friends versus an entrepreneur who will hide, skirt, and act like they got everything in life figured out. I will repel that relationship because I know it is false, or subconsciously, I know something is up here. That can't be possible because we are all screwed up. And so I think when you see people screw up or mess up, we're drawn to that because we're like, oh, you're human. Trying to be this facade, fake human being that hasn't screwed up before. It's kind of like your sales. To give you one more scenario, and I hate the idea that used car sales people get beat up so much. Technically, I worked at Enterprise Rent-A-Car for a period of time, and I sold a used car, so I was there. But I think when they get a bad rap because they'll sell something just to make a buck, but don't believe in the product. So you've been sold something, I'm sure, Ben, in life where the person selling you didn't really believe in the product. So that there was no authenticity there. There was no rich, raw, real human being behind that product. It was just peddling something. And that makes us squeamish. We don't like that. We don't want to engage with our salesperson. But you give me a salesperson who loves and is totally passionate about what they do. You'll buy almost anything from them because they're like, oh my gosh, they love it. They're high on life. This is great. And so we buy into that because they're human, because they're real with what they're selling. They're authentic about it. So you're just giving me some ideas behind, some of the things out there that are fake, and conforming when you don't want to conform is very fake. And it feels gross to a lot of people.
What I was just thinking about when you were talking, Ken, is that even when the people I don't necessarily agree with, but even in the face of like the disagreement, whether they are so blinded by whatever it is, you still have to respect the fact that they have conviction to whatever it is. And, whether it's reality TV, and we could even touch base on this now. I think the current thing that's currently happening now is that If anytime the word like Trump comes up, or vice versa on the other side, Biden, there's a level of, it's just like the walls come down and you just refuse to be able to like see the human beingness on the other side. Now all of a sudden it's just like they're the enemy, they're on the other side. And it reminds me of World War One and World War Two. I think the stat was in World War One, when there was trench warfare and you could see another human being on the other side. I think they found that like 2/3 or 75% of soldiers never pulled the trigger because they couldn't actually bring themselves to do that. And then in World War II, they switched it from, rather than being like, "Hey, see the enemy across there? Like, I want you to shoot them," to saying, lay down you like covering fire at 2 p.m. Suppressing fire at like 10 a.m. Like in terms of like directional, and that they found that then they had like something like 89% compliance. And I think that there is a level of, when we label something, it allows us to compartmentalize the actually human beingness, instead of it being that someone on the other side, whatever their identity was, grandparent, parent, sibling, friend, coworker, all the things that we are and will become, it allows us to remove all of that beingness. And now all of a sudden it's a directional, like you're either a Republican or you're a Democrat. And I'm really curious, if you were to hop in a town hall meeting where you had red and you had blue, and you were to apply open and honesty as an expert in there, how would you facilitate that conversation? Because I think I've always been really curious that, like, if we just saw each other as the human being, these other things, like, yes, I want to be clear, they matter, right? They're like everyone has in terms of like the voting. But I'm curious, how would you facilitate the ability to have openness, honesty, yet still keep the love?
Yes, great. I would start with, I love the question. I want to get back to your World War One and Two comment later, if we can remember that. It was so good, Ben. So good. When we have, first of all, red and blues in the room. So picture the room. Let's just say, I don't know, 10 on each side. And we're all sitting in the room. I think first we got to get clear on what the goal is. Or what's the goal of us being here today? Because if it's just to rip other human beings apart, we all probably shouldn't be here. But if we are going to work for and fight for an ability to hear and respect one another and progress our societal issues, I think we could all pretty much stand for that. So let's just make sure we see the goal the same way. But if somebody has a goal of wanting to fry the other side, this doesn't work. So this will not work if we cannot agree to communicate a certain way. And so every single time then in my sessions, there's healthy rules I have in my wall over here. And I go over these healthy rules before every session. If you have been with me for almost 9 years doing this work, every single session you will hear my healthy rules. And I would share that with the red and blue group. And I would say, here's how we're going to behave today. And I'm going to share my bottom 2 healthy rules. We're going to be honest, meaning I do want you all to be truly and freely yourselves, speak into what you want and how you feel. It is very important you put the real perspective on the table, that you're not trying to politic or worm somebody up by deceiving them. I mean, just really put the real issues on the table. That's a good thing. But you also have to be willing, and this is the tougher hill to climb, to be open, to listen without reservation, to put your needs and wants on pause for a second and hear what the other person is saying. If we can agree to do those 2 things, then we're going to be all right. And I call that the agreement. I make all my leadership team members agree to that. If red and blue cannot agree on that during the course of whatever we're trying to solve, this will not work, at least not as effectively as it could. So when I facilitate it, I'm constantly checking for honesty or a lack of honesty. I'm constantly looking for openness or close-mindedness. And when I see a lack of honesty or close-mindedness, I stop. I say, hey, then I'm not sure I'm really getting the full truth from you. It just sounds like there's something else there. You make sure you put it on the table for us. Or if somebody's closed-minded, where their walls go up like crazy, or they're totally defensive, or they're shutting people out, not even hearing them, I'll slow it down. I'm like, okay, hold on, Ken. Let's take a pause here. I just want to acknowledge, did you hear what Ben said? Did you just repeat what Ben said? Okay, now how do you feel about what Ben said, knowing that you heard it? So sometimes we're just so ready to pull the trigger at each other versus like, okay, what did you hear that person actually say? And let's just clarify that we heard that. And look, we're not going to walk into that room like we cannot expect us all to agree. However, if people can be open, they will increase their understanding of another human being. And just by increasing their understanding of another human being a little bit, like just really listening without reservation, it's much like being in the trenches in World War I, where you're like, oh my gosh, that's a human that has tissue and a soul and a mind and a body, just like me. And so it just increases their understanding enough to give pause to trying to brutally fillet somebody, and that's what we're trying to do. We're not going to totally convert everybody. That's insanity. But we are going to increase our understanding of one another's issues. And simply by doing that, we're going to do a better job, create a better outcome for the whole group.
Did you want to say anything more about that World War One, World War II?
Oh, man, you're just killing it, because that, to me, the World War I thing and in the trenches was like, yeah, that's what it was like 50 years ago when we would come to the dinner table, and we would actually talk like human beings. And, and now what we've done is we're like, oh, man, having to sit at a table with human beings is too much. Let's get our phones out. Let's have social media separate us more. So it's just less personal and less relationship building, And so a similar sort of wedge has been built, based on what you were sharing about World War I.
I remember reading that, just going like that. That's amazing. There was while I was in college, before I left college early, I was a political science major, and I remember reading this. I think it was the paper or white paper by an economist named Amani Sen, who I think ended up winning like a Nobel Prize. But he basically had said, he goes, once we label things, and when you label things, is that you lose the ability to have a conversation. And I remember that just stuck so much with me. West versus East, Christian versus Muslim, red versus like blue. And I think that is, it's like this polarity trying to pull away the idea at the core of all of it is that we're human beings.
Can you share that quote one more time?
That when we label things, we lose the ability to have a conversation.
It reminds me of a little bit. I don't know. Maybe this is a stretch, Ben. You tell me if I'm reaching here. But preference is the root of all suffering. You heard that one?
Mm-mm.
Preference is the root of all suffering. I do believe I pulled that. There's some Buddhist history here. I think I found it through Michael Singer of the book Untethered Soul. But think about our preferences that we have and how much pain they cause us. So, or take the opposite, have no preference. If you had no preference, what your life would be. I mean, you would really just float on, okay with anything. Nothing bothers you because you don't have a preference. You're like, somebody's stabbing me in the hand. Well, that's a preference. You don't want them to stab you in the hand. And so, well, what if you're like, it's just pain? I mean, and that's a very extreme case, but it's like, I wish Ken would have wore his suit to the podcast or something. Well, now that causes you pain because now you have to look at me for however long you got to look at me. Or I wish my wife didn't have a political beef with me. Well, now we have pain. So preference being the root of all suffering somehow to me relates to what you're quoting about labeling things. And it is causing a lot of pain and drama for people. So I think if we can reduce, you shouldn't have zero. I don't agree with this statement in the most polarizing of ways, right? Like, look, I am going to walk across the street when the green light comes on, not when it's red, So there's certain things that, come on, we got to be realistic about. But man, preference is the root of all suffering, labeling things. There's something about that. And it's even worse now. And because we're lazy, if we're tying it full circle to the beginning of this podcast, because we're lazy, we just choose like a disconnectedness, and we choose everything we want, all our preferences. And when somebody has the opposite preference, we just shut them out.
Yeah. Well, I think it's convenient. I think it's ultimate convenience. We as humans, we like to organize things like, in terms of your sweaters with your sweaters, you put like your bread with your bread in the pantry, you put your milk by the milk. And these are all like these little micro conveniences that allow us to, I think, compartmentalize. And I think that that's I think preference is just another word for that. It's convenience.
Totally. So you said you have two. I'm going to relate it, but you have two, or one little one.
Yep. Yeah. I have a almost 17-year-old and a 4-year-old, and my son would have been about a year and a half, actually, coming up here in 10 days. Yep. And then I have one coming due here.
That's right. Okay. And so our children are just, they do whatever they want to do. They're free spirit, and then we try to control and mold and create a conformity for them. I mean, granted, they're gonna have rules and stuff, but I wanted to share a story with you about, I came home, so I have, like a lot of entrepreneurs, control issues, right? Want to control. This entrepreneur thing is my baby, or I want to make sure it's done this way. And, I got control issues. I'm still working on them. But it was a couple years ago. I was coming home to my wife. And we had our two kids at the time who were, I'll say, 4 and 6. And I came in, and the kids were bouncing all over the couch. The place was a mess. Dinner wasn't made. I had a long day at work. I mean, it was really tough. And I'm like, what happened? Like, Ilsa, you must not, Ilsa's my wife, permission to say these things from her mother. I'm like, what? Are you not going to make sure the house is clean? Are you not going to make sure that dinner's ready and the kids just get to do whatever they want to and destroy our couch and destroy whatever they want to do? And this is bad, And so the control freak in me is like, list of all the things that need to be in order and control. And I that moment made me so upset and so angry. Like, Ben, I had no joy in my life in that moment. I was just an angry, insert cuss word. And that's all due to control and wanting preference and wanting the labels to be the labels I needed them to be. And then we have this practice called distill, which is just understanding where you're at, being discontent or content with certain things in your life. And how are you doing with all these categories in your life? And if I had to say how my home life was in that moment, I was discontent, right? And so, what do you have to change in order to be content with that scenario? Well, quite frankly, all you need to change is your mindset. And so it couldn't have been like a month later that I was coming home, almost exact same scenario. I come home, and now my mindset's way different. But I came home, and Ilsa was there. Dinner wasn't ready. The kids were making a mess of the house, jumping on the couches. It's the same thing. And, I just looked at it through a different lens, and I'm like, my wife, she works too. And it was probably a rough day. And she's probably tired like I would be, not wanting to make dinner. My children are over there laughing and giggling and having a good time. And I don't know, as a family, we can clean up the house. Literally shifted my mindset a bit. And I'm just a happier human being. Really all thanks to that quote. And so there's a lot in that. And that is a certain openness, right? It's not exactly listening without reservation, but it is putting your needs and wants on pause for just the scenario that's playing out and maybe seeing the good in it as opposed to seeing how it's not the exact way that I want it.
When people hear open and honesty, and I think sometimes when they listen to podcasts, they're assuming like, well, just don't have like those moments. And I think that those moments are, I don't think it's to not have those moments. I think it's to have like the moments because they're the great fuel, the raw resource for you to be able to like do the excavation, right? I mean, you did a little mini excavation and it allowed you to unlock if you went from feeling anger, frustration, irritation to happiness, joy, empathy, and grace. And I'm I'm really curious, Ken, how would you describe the ingredients if this was a recipe for openness, ingredients for honesty? Because I'm getting this sense that openness and honesty are the major precursors for you to really fully experience like the emotion, right? On either side, right? Equal and opposite, joy, sorrow, happiness, anger, curiosity, frustration, right? But I think it's not to say don't feel like anger, sorrow, frustration, but I think there's a level of where you can experience those in a different way. One really destructive, and another as a fuel.
Yeah. Oh, Ben, I'm going to flip it on you.
Ooh, come on.
The ingredients, I would say, already exist. It's already in you. Every human being has some level of honesty and some level of openness. What's happening is we're actually dirtying up our ingredients we already have. I think you just go back to a child and they just say whatever they're thinking and just being themselves. That is honesty in its purest form. And then we're like, don't do that. How dare you jump on the couch, or don't read so fast, or don't do this, and this is wrong. And then they start to conform and not be themselves. And so, oh, wow, to make other people happy, I must do what 7.99 billion people in the world expect of me, as opposed to be myself, who I am, which is already inside of me. Actually, if you could picture water flowing back and forth between you and I. And so this water is in its purest form in this pipe, and it goes to you. You speak back, it goes to me. I speak back, it goes to you, and it goes back and forth. But instead, what happens is we dirty that water up. We put it in a bunch of mud, and then we throw it down the pipe. And then it's like, well, that's not real clear. Or we block the pipe up with certain things. Now the water can't totally get through. I mean, we're piling on things that are screwing up communication. We're putting up walls so we're not open. We're putting on facades so that we're not honest. I mean, that's what's taking place.
So, what are the things that we're putting in to dirty it? I mean, some of the things I've heard: control, fear, ego. I think preference. Right. I think these are some of the things like I've heard. I mean, like, so what are the other things that we put in there, and what are the filters we can put in that pipeline between, like, for example, we're talking about like between you and I. What's the filter we can put on that open honesty pipeline that can filter that out? And I think then the follow on is, what are the lenses we can put on that help us remove or shift away from facades? And what are those facades that you see, especially across entrepreneurs, that they put on to block the honesty? So openness filters, honesty facades.
So openness to me, I would call those walls, right? So the walls go up. It's more about, I don't know if it's maybe a filter, but it's more about knocking walls down, right? So let me go over the definition of openness and break it down for you a little bit. Openness is listening without reservation, right? And putting your needs and wants on pause for somebody else. Listening without reservation. Here's what it looks like. So if I'm listening to you, Ben, and you're great, right? You cannot be a great podcaster and be closed-minded. You will not succeed, you know? So you are good at this. Like, I'm just so pleased with your summary around control, fear, ego, and preference that you listed off. That to me means that you're just really open. That's awesome. And you're really listening without reservation, right? And so I think that's important. But listening without reservation is shutting it all down. Like, I'm totally present here for Ben. I don't have thoughts rattling around inside. I've actually gotten rid of them. And I'm just totally hearing you. I'm in your shoes. I'm trying to understand your world. And you mentioning the makeup of your children. And I'm already thinking through some of the things that you said about your children and thinking about the pains you must have gone through, struggles you must have been through. And I'm totally into you. It's not about me when it comes to openness. It's not. But what happens is that wall comes up and it's like, I want to make it about me. What challenges do I have with my kids? What kind of things do I want? Let me think about my world. And it's just a mess. And so what we got to do is train people to knock those walls down. And we have a couple practices. I mean, the wall is a practice. And I think it first starts with identifying historical walls that have taken place. So maybe you can do this exercise, but think of a time where a wall has gone up and it really messed with your ability to be open to another human being. An example might be my boss was yelling at me, criticizing me. Wall goes up. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Therefore, you cannot hear the critique or the criticism coming at you. Or somebody's on the opposite side of the political spectrum. Don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. So these walls keep coming up. If you look at the historical ones, it helps you create awareness for where you're at in the present. So now when I go home tonight, so an in the moment practice with the wall is if I go home tonight, dinner's not ready, the kids are running all over the place, the whole thing. Where I feel the wall come up, I learn, hold on, that's that thing Ken was talking about, the wall. Time to push it down. Push it down, just be open to the experience that's taking place. And so the clients that we work with, a lot of times it's a reflective practice to begin with. Like, think of some of the times in your past where this has taken place. And now you got to catch it in the moment. Sometimes your anger gets the best of you and it's not who you truly and freely are. So you put up this angry wall. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to be here. Or a control wall. There's so many different walls that could take place, such as the ones you listed. A fear wall, control wall, preference wall. They all go up. But you just got to notice when you're not listening without reservation, it's more about the more positive side of things. Like, hold on. Are you totally in tune with what Ben is saying? Are you totally in tune with what your wife is going through and what she wants out of this scenario? Or are you constantly trying to serve yourself? And if it is serve yourself, turn it off. Stop. And be totally open to that human being. Man, that's when you've got it dialed in, figured out.
I really love that, Ken, when you're talking about just turning it off. And as you're going through the different scenarios, I was just reflecting upon I have a paradigm of experience with my children. My oldest is almost 17, and my second oldest is just turned 4. And I think about the different experiences of my 26-year-old self when I had my oldest and my 39-year-old self. And the amount of walls that were up during my almost 17-year-olds, like those first years, right? From like the breastfeeding years to just like crawling, rolling over, then walking, and then toddler years, and how everything seems so important that was not that. And how it seemed sometimes it felt like I think in retrospect, I can identify it as, okay, this seems inconvenient. Yep. Okay. Yep. Yep. And versus when I was 39 and having my second oldest, and it was like finding myself being able to go, you know what, those things will always be there. The ability to make more money will always be there. The ability to do value creation will always be there. The ability to like be part of like a group text will always be there. To respond back to other people's texts will always be there. And that is like a wall that is, it's like, it's like the tides coming in. It is constantly having to fight that off. And there'll be times where, you know, my second oldest, Mia, she'll just all of a sudden leap onto me while I'm doing something on my phone. And 26-year-old me would have been like, just like lost my shit. But like, what are you doing? I got to do this. And my, well, now almost 43-year-old self is very much more, it's like, it's almost like whether you want to call it the universe or God being like, hey, you must be present to win. And I'll find myself just going, and I can feel like that irritation, that frustration, that almost borderline little bit of like anger will bubble up a little bit. And then I just go, she's 4. She just wants to play. She wants my attention. And at the end of the day, like I only get these moments for a very short period of time. And I'll put the phone down. But there's almost a relief. To your point, this wall analogy, there's almost a relief when you actually, it's like he slayed the dragon. This micro dragon, you just slayed it. And then what I realize is when I look at my daughter's face, and I realize that at that moment, I am being the biggest hero, knight in shining armor, that is actually setting the scene for her of what does it mean to be present. I mean, is that the other word for open and honest? Is presence?
Yeah. I mean, it's dang close. I say it often to just be totally present for the other person. That is to me more the openness side of things. I think honesty is more you're driving home what you want, your goals, your opinions, your beliefs, which is great. It's just when the other person's speaking, give them the space to be who they are. Just be totally present to them. You will be a happier person, for sure.
That's interesting. Let's pivot here to the honesty facades. I'm really curious about this one. Like, we talked about those other kind of those 4 filters or those walls. What are the facades that you see entrepreneurs? Because it's so interesting we say entrepreneurs or even individuals, but these are all facades that we bring to almost every relationship, because every single human being relationship is involving communication, right? But let's just run it through the facade that you and I both deal with. A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of leaders. What are the facades that you see that keep honesty from being able to like rise to the top?
Right. The goal is to be truly and freely yourself, speaking into what you want and how you feel as much of the time as you can possibly. Like just visualize a sense of freedom, just a freedom to be who you are. But what we do a lot of times is we put on a facade or a mask to fake it for the different relationships in our life. I call it fake you. Fake you sounds like something else. That was an accident, and I will tell you it is a happy accident, but it does sound like something else. Fake you. Who in the world is like, yes, I want to be fake me as much as possible. I want to be totally fraudulent and an imposter in everything I do in life. I'm like, that is messed up. Nobody wants to be that. Here's a quote for you that it encourages that, and this is how we've been trained. Fake it until you make it. So I don't think that's good. I think actually that is some pretty poor advice and a really good way to build shells and fake yous all over the place. My partner, Grace Gavin, she did a post the other day and she's like, I do it afraid. I think that is so rich, to do it afraid as opposed to fake it until you make it. People will read fakeness all over you. And so get rid of that. Gino Wickman, the author of Traction and the EOS Life and a bunch of other awesome books, he agreed to be in the book. And he shares the story of when, I think it was when he was 30, his wife threw a surprise birthday party. And that's the last thing Gino ever wants in his life. So he opens up the door, and it's like his old friends, his new friends, his family members, his all these different pieces of his life. And he walks in and he's like, "Oh my God, who am I gonna be to you, and to all these different things to these different people?" And he said, "Never again. I'm gonna be Gino, pure, authentic Gino to every person in my life." And he is. And there's a sense of freedom about the man. And there's a reason people are drawn to him and love him and want to be around him, is because he is that. He is real, pure, authentic Gino. And so when we go to networking events, this one's a very common one, right? We go to networking events and we're like, oh, how would Sally want to view me? I'll play it safe. All right, how are you, Sally? Oh, I'm fine. Great. What do you do? What do I do? It's just this, it's not human almost. It's just kind of walk through the motions. But it'd be real interesting is if I shook hands with Sally because I agreed to be open, because I am open. If Sally said, "You know what? I've had the most effed up time of my life today, and it's just been terrible." That's a breath of fresh air to me. I'm like, "All right, let's go. Let's hear it. Like, what do you got?" Um, and so, but I would probably love Sally because she's just being real and authentic, and those characters we love in reality TV shows where they're not trying to conform and be wallflowers. They're just being who they are. There's a draw to that. It doesn't always pan out, right? Like sometimes you find out, "Ooh, I'm not a match for you because of what you believe in." Well, that's okay. At least that was communicated in a way. So now we know we're not a match, and you can attach to the groups that actually want to be with your authentic Sally self. So, these are just some of the facades and examples I can give you.
Yeah, Ken, I think the other thing that I'm realizing as I'm listening to you is that I think the other headwind against honesty is that it requires time. Because I think a lot of people would be thinking about someone just goes, I had the most effed up like week. Is they're potentially thinking two things. Oh my God. Are you serious? I picked the one person who's either the biggest complainer, or two, going, man, this person's got a lot of drama in their life. But these are like the identities in these social sort of, I'm going to call them shortcuts for us to go, those are the things, versus if you actually required the time that it would to be like, well, let's unpack that. Talk to me about that. And then you find out actually, you know what, they have the similar background to you. And that, you know what, that there's this other thing that is that there's connection point that all of a sudden makes this like the reason why they had that response. There's such a huge outlier to them. But the reality of it is maybe how they're actually going through it actually provides you a formula or a framework for you to actually be able to apply to your life. But we just don't want to spend the time. I it One other anecdotal I think thing that a group of us about every 90 days get together in Chicago, and we usually do dinner. And it happened to come around the conversation of how we meet each other, right? It's so often, it's so surface level. Hey, how you doing? Oh, great. Where are you from? What do you do? Right? What's your favorite color? You have kids, right? We just boom, 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 the social niceties. And he said, I'm kind of gotten tired of my friend Joe. He said, I'm kind of getting tired of this idea of like, what do you do? And he said, I saw this like meme or GIF or whatever, however everyone like says these things, but basically said, instead of asking me what I do, where I live, he said, ask me what I live for, which is such a great way. But I think, again, going back to it requires time. And so I'm curious from your experience, whether it's in a leadership room, whether it's your own personal life, when you unpack honesty, that's not something that can happen in an Instagram like or a click.
I'll share with you do you like Denzel Washington by chance?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't he
Oh,
brilliant?
yeah.
He was in I think the movie Man on Fire. I think the quote was, "I wish you had more time," or something like that. It was a very intense moment in the scene. And this whole thing we're doing around no honesty, is to expedite relationships, is to speed up the connectivity we could have with one another. And if you take the person you met, or we'll just say Dave. Dave says he's having the worst day ever. This is terrible. Oh, thank you for asking. And you gave me the two scenarios. And I thought, well, if you were actually a totally open human being, you'd actually love that conversation. You're actually not making it about you. You're not like, uh-oh, I've just screwed up my networking because I'm stuck with a crazy person. You've already made it about you. You're already closed off. You've already said, what is this conversation going to bring me? Instead, in networking, totally immerse yourself into their life. Totally be connected to them. I'm like, wow. And just empathetic is all get out. Wow, Dave. Man, that sounds right. I don't know you. Where are you at? What's going on? Right? Just a genuine interest in being totally open to that human being. It might be the best conversation of the whole event. But we're so ready to just move on and like cut off that person, be like, hold on, I got to serve myself and meet all these people or whatever. And so like your friends talking about like, I want to go deeper with this. That is what open and honest is. It is deeper. It is getting rid of the facade. It is knocking down the walls. It is almost like, to Patrick Lencioni's book cover, getting naked. It is really this raw, pure form of communication. I had my quarterly with my team today, and Grace, who's been with me for 7.5 years or so, she was we're just next level open and honest. So I think where other people might come into the room and observe what's taking place, they're like, whoa, you two you're going at it. You're kind of, okay. And I'm like, no, we're just completely open and honest. And we love each other after that. And it's no problem. We just move through things faster. Our relationship is so in sync now. It didn't used to be that way. And so we really got to work on these concepts of being 100% honest and 100% open. Once I did a talk, and sometimes I'll do this at a talk where I'm like, hey, we're going to do the agreement. I want you to find somebody who you don't regularly talk to, and I want you to go back and forth. Here's the script on the screen. And I want you to say, hey, Kim, will you be honest with me? Be truly and freely yourself, speaking of what you want and how you feel. And then I'll be open to you. And then here's the deal. I'm going to be honest back at you. And I want you to be open to me. So basically that's the script, right? I've said it about 3 times on the podcast. That certainly is something for people to take away. What happens when I do the talk and I just picture a room full of 100 people, and now 50 couples are coming together to do that agreement back and forth. As they do the script, one person goes and then they're done. Then the other person goes and then they're done. They can't stop talking to each other. They're just like, wow, you gave me permission to be who I am, and you're permission to be who you are. And they just engage, and almost nobody stops talking. To complete strangers, they continue the conversation. What a beautiful, beautiful moment that I think in a couple different ways I have captured on camera, which is great. But you just see these people connecting. If we don't agree to talk that way, walls go up, facade comes on. It's like talking to a brick wall, or to somebody that's totally fake. And so it's really important that we promote and have this kind of connectivity with one another.
Did you ever read the book Tribal Leadership?
Mm-mm.
Well, I didn't either. But what I heard about it was these different levels of like leadership, and like one's like, basically like, like I know you don't, and like there's kind of this hierarchy, but there's this level 5. I think it's level 5 leadership, or someone can fact check me here, but level 5, level 4 leadership that's like so strange and so like hard to find.
Sorry, I think that's in good. Sorry, that's in good to great.
Okay, perfect. Well, so someone told me this, that basically in terms of like where you look at each other and you go, it is about the shared end in mind, which is about having openness, honesty, and with already the preconceived idea that you are great. I'm great. So let's just do great things together. And I love your this script, which sounds maybe for someone who's like listening to, but the more and more I'm listening to you, Ken, I'm going, man, like what a freedom to just be yourself. You know, like that Oscar Wilde, you might as well be yourself because everyone else is taken. Like what an absolute freedom. What I'd love for you to share though is I can imagine there's a bunch of skeptics, right, who are listening. Okay, great. Yeah, this sounds good in theory. This is like, Brene Brown, vulnerability is like a superpower, right? It's glib. It's a good, catchy phrase. What is the outcome when you've seen organizations, leaders commit to this? Like, give me some bottom line outcomes, like company from here to here, that they like these compelling outcomes. What are some compelling outcomes that someone who's listening to this goes, okay, this isn't just like feel good, like openness, honesty, but this has like some real bottom line impact.
Yeah. I'll go tactical so we can all relate real quick, and then I'll go macro for you. But think about the person who put in their 2 weeks notice and you're like, where did that come from? If you are living a truly open and honest relationship with your direct reports, and this is the culture you've all agreed to subscribe to and are living it, that will not happen to you. You will know it's coming months, if not years in advance, because somebody is talking to you about how they want a different opportunity, or they want to be paid more, or they're not challenged, or they're really going to have the conversations, as opposed to basically ghosting you as quickly as possible, right? Like, hey, 2 weeks, yep, don't like the job, thanks. That won't happen in an open and honest relationship, right? My wife and I won't get in surprise arguments because we're doing such a good job communicating when it hits or when it feels off, or here's where I'm really at, where are you at? And we don't get in these crazy, terrible situations in our marriage, because we agree to be 100% honest and 100% open as much as we can be. Now, no human being is 100% all the time for honesty and 100% all the time of openness. So please get that out of your heads. We are just on this pursuit to get there. We're just working at it. We're agreeing that this is a benefit to our lives. At a macro level, the companies that are this, they're the ones that catch issues faster. They're the ones that can grow their company better or pivot to a better idea or a better opportunity because they're open and honest about their model today is not as strong as it needs to be, as opposed to like blinding themselves to the issues and not talking through what they really need to. You just move faster without it feeling like it's moving faster because it's just natural communication going back and forth and back and forth. And so that's one of the benefits for sure for my clients. And then I have so many people since the book has been out, coming out to me and telling me, wow, this chapter really hit me. I realize I'm not being open at all to the relationships in my life. Or the person who related to the story in the beginning of the book, who, like, I was a kid who got bullied, even though my dad and I never used that vocabulary word in my upbringing, but I got bullied and it messed me up. And so people are like, man, that really messed me up. And so this willingness for people to talk about their issues and be heard and respected, man, it just makes it such a much more safer culture and an environment we can thrive in. And it's not just fake. I mean, I could go through my client list and I could show you, here are the ones that subscribe to it. Here are the ones that don't. The ones that don't make it long. Or they struggle very badly because they're holding on to poor historical ways of communicating. And I'm not upset with them. I just know they were taught wrong or they weren't educated on this, and nobody's helping them through it. So I'm just here to try to help them. Like, you got to be honest and open so we can actually work through the real issues you have with each other and your company, the relationship you have. We also had a statistic. So we had this thing called I'm dumping a lot on you now. But we have the Pursuit of Honesty assessment online. It's free for now. It'll probably be free for another 6 months. I keep saying that. But it shows you how honest you are and how open you are in your personal life, how honest you are and how open you are in your work life. Very telling after you take the Pursuit of Honesty assessment, where you have places you got to work in your life. And so for this data to come through, there's a lot of interesting statistics that keep rearing their heads. But there are people are more honest than they are open. So that is consistent. That makes sense. It makes sense because that's how society has trained us to be at this stage. It's interesting, the statistics, so I'll do it with breakout teams. Some teams are a little more comfortable being open and honest at work than they are in their personal lives. Some are more open and honest in their work or their personal lives than they are in their work lives. Picture that for a moment. And probably what the relationships look like at work, if people are more open and honest, it's more freeing, it's a more inviting culture, there's more ideas, there's more opportunities, your voice is heard and respected. If you go home and you have low honesty, low openness, you have some pain there. You have a relationship there that is dying, that is not growing. We're not addressing the real issues. We're not enjoying each other for who we are. And then if you flip the two, I mean, just go ahead and play it out. So I encourage people to take the assessment. But one of the statistics that we found, Grace always tells me, like, Ken, you can confuse people with all your math. And I'm like, well, I'm trying not to. So I'm going to do the best I can. In the top quartile of people that had high honesty at work, and then versus the bottom quartile of honesty at work, the top quartile was 20% happier with their life than the bottom quartile. Now, that was significant to me. And so for the other ones, it didn't have as much correlation. But what it did tell me is how important it is that we can be truly and freely ourselves at work. Where actually you're probably being asked for some of the most conformity. But to the degree you can be truly and freely yourself at work, are you much happier with your whole life overall? Man, that is crucial for trying to design the kind of culture you want. And unfortunately, in the United States, I mean, we have a couple barriers here. We have HR policies, can't get around that. And you got legal issues, can't get around that. So those two things are really our barriers to being fully honest, truly and freely ourselves. And so I just feel like that's almost like a legal disclaimer, like, hey, pay attention to those two things. But then, like, how do you create a culture where people can really be heard and respected nonstop, encouraging people, even when the hard truth comes at you or criticism of the company comes at you? How do you reward that, praise that, beg for it, say, please give me that so we can be stronger? Man, those are the kind of cultures that succeed.
And by the way, for those who are listening, we will put the link in the description of this Pursuit of Honesty assessment. I love that you did that. I think that is really cool. I'm excited to dive into that, and it's got to give you a front row seat to just some really interesting insights. But I think that your framework is even more important as we head into this new AI age. The people I know that I think that are at the forefront of AI, they are basically saying, hey, when we hit competitive parity, because that's what AI is going to allow us all to do as businesses, create parity competitively. I think it puts us in, I've said this multiple times on the podcast, that it's like the Four Seasons CEO, his quote where he said, systematize the repeatable so you can humanize the exceptional. And I think that your framework is really going to become more and more valuable to the health of your organization. I think to what your customers or your clients actually experience, is that this framework of openness and honesty. You know, we've all eaten food that you go, man, that food was cooked with love. it doesn't have to be the most expensive food, but it was the who showed up with most openness, honesty, and then showed the most love, right? And the care of like that. Or you can go to the opposite end and go have an incredible, impeccable technique like meal, but you go, that just didn't land, right? 5 times, 6 times, probably 10 times more expensive, but it just didn't land. And I think that is the two examples where, but I think the thing that's happening there is open honesty of who you are as the human being and showing that in the product, in the say, show your work. I think that is going to be how you show your work in the moving forward, is your ability for openness and honesty in your organization, in yourself, and the encouragement of bringing getting your team to bring that home.
Oh, let me share this with you on the AI thing. So I had a friend. I was went to golf, went and had a beer afterwards, and I was checking email. So how's that for disconnectedness? And I'm like, hold on, I gotta check this thing real quick. And then I was talking to him about how, a client did a survey for me, and it was just really great. And I sent him an email back, and I just said, thank you. Just really appreciate you taking time for me and doing what you did. And my friend looked at me and goes, was that automated? And I'm like, no, I don't. No, I thank them authentically, purely. And he looks at me and goes, yeah. I mean, so kind of like I sent an email with love. And so like AI, know what it's going to do? It's going to strip that love. So exactly what you're talking about, for sure. I'll give you one more example. I don't think we mentioned the EOS maybe at all, or maybe to the degree I'm about to, but so been at EOS implementer for, almost 9 years. And I love it, man. It's the best mousetrap out there for sure. The thing's brilliant. It's brilliant. And it's only a matter of time before everybody's using it. That's just how you're going to run your business. But when I run sessions, so I get, I don't know, somewhere between 3 to 7 people coming to my session room. We have an all day session. We get to the end of the day, and I'm just observing how everybody's doing. Sometimes they're exhausted or they're filled with life, or, everything in between. And, if I could collect all the feedback and just kind of summarize it in what they enjoyed about the journey, or what mattered to them in the session room, they're not sitting around bragging about the tools. They're not like, man, that scorecard rocked my world. I can't wait life about it. They're not saying like, oh, the accountability chart, man, we are just so awesome together. Now they do once in a while, but that's not the heavy thing. So I'm like, well, it's probably Ken Bogard. What an awesome facilitator, right? Like, he is amazing. I'm sure that's what they're saying. Nope. It's not me. I mean, they might say that once in a while, but you know what they say? Most common thing that my clients say in terms of feedback, what they loved or what moved them, was it was awesome to spend time in the room with you all. That's what they say. This huge EOS system, a professional facilitator, and all they're really saying that they love most is just being in a room all day together working through this stuff. Man, is that loud? And so all this stuff, Ben, is coming out at the perfect time because AI is taking over. And there's some crazy benefits to it. So please, let's not take away from that. Come on. Like, this stuff is great, but you cannot substitute humanizing and relationships and connectivity. Do not systemize that part of your business. That stuff's got to be real and authentic, especially to remain competitive, because people are going to start sniffing that out real quick.
Yeah, it is. I'm reminded of this JW Marriott commercial, and I think I've brought this up in the podcast maybe a couple times, but it's resonated with me, and it's actually become a little bit of the basis of like a war cry, so to speak, that I have across all my organizations. And it's basically like this B-roll. Again, the context of this, I'm on this Delta flight, and number one, I'm just a little bit fascinated because they're like, we're going to go through the safety instructions. And they all of a sudden, like, this commercial comes on. And I'm like, are you kidding me? They figured out how to monetize safety instructions. I'm like, brilliant. But anyways, I start watching this commercial. It's all this B-roll of all these people. Like, you can clearly see connecting. They are connecting with each other. They're talking to each other. They're verbally, non-verbally connecting and communicating. And it finally gets to the end, and it says, at JW Marriott, we believe that experience first starts with how we treat each other. Pans out. And I think that you are right. I think that AI is an incredible way for us to be able to maybe get a draft down, or first draft, first 80% down of how we want to communicate. But I have yet to have create something that didn't go, this does not have the umami of a human being. And the reason why I call it umami is because umami is this thing that you can't actually like describe it. Like, it's literally, it's not sweetness, bitterness, saltiness, right? It's not like, can't remember what the fourth sense is, but it's like this thing you can't really actually you can't really describe. And I think that that is a massive opportunity for entrepreneurs out there, is that the speed to getting XYZ, the speed to maybe organize something, but it's the curation. That's the artwork of human beings. And I think it all starts at the root cause of openness and honesty. Yeah. Ken, at what point did you realize that this was going to be your calling? Right? Because, I mean, there's lots of all these different, like, avenues that entrepreneurially minded, like helping, self-help, DIY, right? People who write books like Brene Brown, she found her, I think, calling really in this idea of vulnerability in leadership, right? As you kind of talked about earlier. When did you know, and what was it that made you go, this is how I'm going to spend the rest of my life, diving in with people who want openness and honesty and who understand its impact?
My life, Ben, if you can picture a series of pieces of an equation, there's this very long equation to my life. And there's this piece of the equation, which is when I was a small child, and then a teenager, and then young 20s, and then 30s. And then, there's just all these pieces of my life that led up to this. And you can read about it in the book. Otherwise, we would spend another 2 hours here for me to give you all those pieces, but which I'd love to do. This has been great. You're great at what you do. So I enjoy this. And thank you for the platform to share everything I have. But the one piece of the equation that stands out to me, where it's like really pushed it over. So 9 years ago, I started No Honesty, KNOW, honesty. It is a play on words on purpose. I wanted to start a system for helping entrepreneurs to be more open and honest, because I couldn't stand the lack of honesty in the workplace, like just different events in my life. And I'm like, it's disgusting how much lack honesty. It's gross. And I'm like, I just didn't have the framework built, and I found EOS, and I'm like, hold on, EOS is the best mousetrap out there. It does work, and it is probably the quickest way to try to do what I want to do right now. And then about 4 years into that journey, I saw these healthy rules on the wall that I told you about earlier, and somebody had healthy rules of be open, be honest on their wall. So a few years into my EOS journey, I saw those rules, and I'm in a room full of like 35 people, and I shut them all out, and I saw those rules. I'm like, that is what is missing in the session room. And so when I bring my leadership teams in, I started sharing the healthy rules I was telling you about. And they come in and they're open and honest like crazy now. And it's like all they needed was just a little switch. They just needed just a little permission to be freely themselves, just a little bit of a knock on the head to please listen to your other teammates really well today. And so I share those healthy rules. And when I do that, man, we work through that objective and agenda. Just it's just different. Before the healthy rules, they came in like zombies, right? Just zombies ready to get through the day. Now, after sharing the healthy rules, they come in like, yeah, I'm going to say my piece. I'm going to say who I am, what I want from my role for this company. And I'm going to listen to Dave, and I'm going to slow down and really hear him. And I'm going to allow Sally to say whatever she needs to. And it's just a different level of teammanship and culture in the session room ever since I found that. And so that those two things were kind of the tipping points, like being sick of the lack of honesty in the workplace, pushing these healthy rules on people. And then I have to add, and we heard it once before, but reading the book Untethered Soul really helped bring in the openness at a whole new level of depth. And for me, much more peace at just allowing life to play out a little bit more instead of trying to control it all.
I love how you put that in a formulaic way, in that we do have this equation. When you pull out one little like portion of it, I think that when I think about listening to your journey, is that it just didn't happen overnight. And I think that's such an important reminder, is that these things just don't happen overnight. And that's like a level of openness and honesty that I think a lot of people, when they see you, like you're obviously an elite EOS implementer who I think has created, I think, a whole other movement that basically that fuels, as you called, the mousetrap, openness and honesty. I think is incredible. Ken, if people want to find more about you, if they want to like read your book, they want to follow along with the things that you're doing, regardless of whether they're an entrepreneur or not, where can they find you?
So I would encourage you all to go on to LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. Message me, be a human with me, start a conversation with me so I know you're real and you're out there, and at least have one little opportunity to connect. But do message me and do talk about these philosophies. And maybe you hated everything that took place on this podcast and you just want to let me have it. I mean, that's okay. Like, I'm going to be open to that. And that's probably the best way. So look up Ken Bogard on LinkedIn. You'll find me. But you can also go to nohonesty.com. If you go to nohonesty.com/podcast or podcasts with an S, I can't remember now. You can buy the book at a 40% discount because we're doing the show with you, Ben. So get it at a discount and we'll send it to you. And then also just peruse the website, nohonesty.com. You can find the Pursuit of Honesty assessment. Go take that thing. Like I said, it's free for probably another 6 months. So get it while you can without paying a dime. And then you'll get your scores and you'll get this cool little chart that shows you where you're at on the open and honest model. And just enjoy that and go do it with another human being. Go have a conversation with your husband or wife or partner or whoever in business that you want to. Take it with your whole team and just learn from each other. What a cool tool to use. And then connect with us and join our newsletter. There's so many options. But to summarize it, LinkedIn, Ken Bogard, nohonesty.com, dance around on that thing and find your way. And, let's get connected that way.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for the generous offer. And again, we will include links in the description to all of these things that Ken is generously giving us. And then, Ken, before we sign off here, I always like to give our guests the final word, the final thought, the final ripple. What do you want our audience to walk away with and either ponder, execute, or implement?
Yeah, if everybody scrolled all the way to the very end of your podcast just to get this message, it's worth it. For me, it's stop trying to control the entire world because it is filled with 8 billion beautiful people that have their own lives too. And just try one conversation at a time. to be way more open to them, what's going on in their life, and embrace those differences that you have with them. If we do that, we are a much better world.
That's so beautiful. Ken, thank you so much for.
Thank you for listening. A big thanks to Elation Lab for the production and creative design. Remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Keep listening for more MaxLife.